Welcome back. Today we're going to end up seeing two-step equations with radicals. So we are solving by using radicals, whether it be the square root, cube root, or other type of root. So just to review from yesterday, we learned that the inverse of a square root is a square, and the inverse of a cube root is a cube. So the steps to solve, remember, write these down if you haven't already. The first one is to isolate the radical. So make sure you do that. You first isolate the radical. Then eliminate the radical. Isolate the variable. And the very last thing now what we're going to do is we're going to solve. So let's look at some examples together. So we have here our first example, which is the square root of 3x equals 6. So looking at the steps, first thing it says to isolate the radical. So how do I undo the radical? Remember yesterday we saw that if I have the square root, the inverse of a square root or a radical is by squaring. So I square both sides. And now we have 3x equals 6 squared, which is 36. Now to solve for x, our next step is to divide by 3. So I'm multiplying 3x, now I just divide by 3. And we have x equals 12. A way to check is by doing the following. Actually substituting in for your variable, okay? So we would do the square root of 3 times replace x with 12. Okay? See if that equals 6. So 3 times 12, that is 36. Is the square root of 36 6? Yes, it is. So that's a quick way for you to check. Let's look at another example. So right here it says to isolate the radical, but before we isolate the radical, what do we need to do? We need to divide by 3. So then we end up doing the following. We have then square root of x equals 5. And then to get rid of that radical, to isolate the radical, we square it, both sides. And now we're left with x equals 25. Once again, if you want to check your work, just substitute or replace where your x is. So what you got for x? Square root of 25 is 5. And 3 times 5 is 15. So it checks out. Okay. On to our next one. So in this case, we have it written, our exponent as a fraction, 1/3. Like in the previous example we just did, the first thing we're going to do is divide by 6. Okay. Now we have x to the 1/3 is equal to 48 divided by 6, which is 7. Sorry, not 7, 8. Just kidding. And once we end up doing that, now the inverse of 1/3, remember, is cube, or 3/1. So we're going to cube both sides. And then we're going to take 8 to the 3rd power, which is 512. So x is equal to 512. And like before, you could also end up checking your work by substituting x for 512 taking 512 to the 1/3 power, checking if it equals to 40. So if I take 512 to the 1/3 power, that equals 8. And then 6 times 8, that equals 40. Now the last example we have here is a little bit different. What we're going to do the following is we're going to end up, since I have the square root of x plus 7, x plus 7 is together. So to undo, we're going to end up squaring everything to isolate the radical. Get rid of the radical. And now what we have left is x plus 7 is equal to 14 squared. And 14 squared is 196. And then we're solving for x, we subtract 7. Therefore, x is equal to 189. Any questions? Feel free to just send an email. Make sure you pause if there are things you need to go back to. And you can go back. Have a wonderful day.